Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill. To deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for joining in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, follow, and share our podcast on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, all of those things. We're trying to get our numbers up. We'll definitely appreciate it if you support us since you listen already. And also, stay until the end. I'm going to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast. But you got to stay until the end to get that information. So, today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest. Miss Lacresia, how are you doing?
I am well. I'm so excited to be with you today, Ernest.
No problem. First of all, let me say thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us, because you could be doing anything else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No problem. So let's jump right on in it. So do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, my name is Lacresia, and I am owner and founder of OneEighty. And OneEighty helps women do the inner work so they can heal, thrive spiritually, physically, and mentally. I'm also host of A Seat at the Table, where I have created space for everyday women like me and our listeners to share their lived experience and the revelation that they got of themselves. Just community.
Okay. So 2 questions that I have right off the bat. First of all, what is OneEighty and how did that name come about? And then the second question is, the Seat at the Table, is that a podcast?
First question, OneEighty. OneEighty was actually, I came up with the name from my own lived experiences. I don't care who any person is, their status, their education. We all have experienced some type of trauma in our life. And I define trauma as anything that you cannot get over immediately. And so OneEighty was actually birthed from making the choice, kind of like what you said, to heal from the pain, making the choice actually to confront the pain, confront how we feel, confront the emotional response, and make those steps and those the journey actually to turn from that to wholeness, spiritually, physically, and mentally. So that's where 180 came from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second
And then
question.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, second question was, what is a seat at the table? A seat at the table is my Instagram lives that I do. Right now, we're doing them once a month, and we're going to be moving up to every other Thursday. But again, it's a platform dedicated to everyday women to share their stories, to share their experiences, to share the tools and the strategies that they use to, again, do the 180, to turn from the pain, to confront it, and then to thrive.
Okay, okay, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So, Lacresia, so we're gonna. I don't want to start there, right? I don't want to start here. I want to go back. I want to go back because, as I say often, any of us that has a heart for people and have a platform to make change in the lives of other people started from somewhere. You know, we didn't just wake up and be like, "Hey, this is who I am." So there's always a backstory that where we got our purpose and our meaning from for what it is we do. So, who was Lacresia before your transaction or transformation, should I say? And then, what was that journey to becoming the person that you are now?
Whew, Ernest, that is a loaded question. But I'll tell you this. I kind of start here. I was raised in a church home, mom and dad, ministers, evangelists. And I grew up in a church home, and I laughed when I had determined when I left there, I was going to do anything and everything I thought I was grown enough to do. Because I felt like I didn't get a chance to experience anything. I didn't really have my own voice. And so again, I'm grateful for the upbringing that I had because it actually brought me to this place of transformation. But I got out of my parents' house, I graduated, and I just did anything and everything I thought I was grown enough to do. And I landed in some very, very toxic relationships. Domestic violence, physical abuse, and just this downward spiral of not confronting that pain and not really knowing who I was. So I spent a lot of my young adult life really trying to find myself in relationships, which is part of my passion for 180 is really women recognizing who they are. And I believe that one of the things that really hindered me was being raised in the church. There was always this saying, the scripture, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And so I believe what happened was a lot of girls in the church, they're raised to be wives instead of really knowing who they are outside of roles.
Mm-hmm.
So I really spent my younger adult life trying to be a wife instead of really knowing myself and actually knowing a good man from one that maybe was toxic. And I just had very toxic, bad relationships. And before I knew it, it just continued to down spiral. And it was not until I was tired of being tired that I began to confront the root issues.
Okay. So I can relate to you with the upbringing because I myself was raised in the church. I am a PK and all of that, and I went on myself to become a minister and not associate pastor, executive pastor of a church, and so I definitely know the upbringing, right? And I identify with. I didn't necessarily run away from it. I always had one foot in, one foot out. Know,
that's a better way to put it. That's how it
was. I was conscious within myself. I just knew, just for me, and I think this just was my relationship with the Lord, that I knew I didn't want to go too far away. Yeah. I did want, I wanted to get, put my hands in the water and all that, but I didn't want to get too far away. So I never really went like all out, like I played a little bit, like let me go back where I know I'm safe,
Exactly. I'm gonna be real transparent with you, Ernest. One of my good friends, we're still friends now. We went to college together. We're still friends now. And she would say, whenever you would get a drink, whenever you would have some type of drink, you would start preaching. So I'm like, so I knew that there was a deep calling on my life. And like you said, the Lord in his grace and mercy, he didn't allow me to go too far, but I did. I love the club scene. And it was just something that I loved it. And so what happened is I connected with a guy that was associated with drugs. And just that whole lifestyle just opened up Pandora's door for me.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's why the scripture says, raise up a child in the way that he should go, and he won't depart. So
that part,
we try. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we try to depart. But there are both of us that and just like I said, just we're being raised in the church. There are some who just go way off somewhere.
Yes.
So some do go, but then there are some that he's like, no, you're not, you're not going that far. Come on back, and so definitely grateful to be one of those that he didn't go too far. But I wanted to touch on a little of something you said, because I identify with it in the thought process, and you said that a lot of the girls, young ladies being raised to be wives, and so they didn't really get to know themselves, right? And I want to make sure I'm saying it right. And I think about that two ways. One, because I one of the things that I teach when I'm talking to young ladies, one thing that I do tell them, those who are looking for mates, and I would say, well, the Bible says, "He who findeth a wife." Not he who findeth the girlfriend or whatever. So you should already be wife material when he finds you, right? So he's already, you're already that. But I never thought about it, like you just said, even with that saying or with that thought process. Although, yes, you should be a wife, but a big part of that is knowing who you are personally, so that you can show up, authentically in your own standing as being a wife, not only being a wife, but being a woman first, and then a wife. So that was interesting. Just my processing, just when you just said that. So you want to speak a little bit more about that, because I think that's interesting.
I can. It's funny, and I went through I was just pissed. And I will say I am happily married now. I love my husband. We've been married now. This is my second marriage. We've been married now for almost 11 years. But I remember just going through this season of just, again, dealing with some unresolved trauma. And I remember just sitting down like, I'm mad. I'm mad at the church because I hate how we glossed over the fact of Genesis 1:27, that God said, let us create man and woman in our image, in our likeness. And we did not push that message very well, I don't believe, in the church. And I say this most often, we had a Women's Day where the women, they can speak. But our regular roles was teaching Sunday school, being on the usher board, and hospitality. And I'm grateful. Again, I love to serve. That's part of the role of a woman, is to serve and to nurture those around her to life. But I'm recognizing that when we don't create the space to really know who we are, be comfortable in our own skin, we actually, don't fully occupy any role that we could ever serve. And I recognize for myself that I really needed to know who I was outside of serving my husband or serving my children, and even serving the Lord, because even with that, if the word says, love your husband and serve your husband as unto the Lord, well, if I don't really fully know and acknowledge that God sees me outside of, a wife, I'm forever attached to performance. And I wanted the liberty of being free to be.
Right. Okay. Cool. And I like that. So when we're talking about, because I know going back a little bit, because we're talking about, I was asking you about your journey to becoming, who you are, and just with the women that you work with, and with your program, I know that there's a transformation, sort of that takes place, because just as you were on a journey and still are,
Yeah.
that they have a journey too, and maybe their journey haven't begun yet, and there may be some parts of their journey that they haven't learned to accept for themselves,
Yeah.
right? So I know that one of the things that you talk about, is honoring your journey. So when you're talking to some of the women, and trying to get them to understand, and accept their own journeys, what is something that you encourage them to do to even be able to come to the realization that, their story is special, this journey that they are on is special?
One of the things that I gave myself permission to do, and I create space for them to give themselves permission to feel, to actually feel and to acknowledge how they feel. Often in our community, especially in the colored community, we are taught, just keep going, oh, don't worry about it, just keep going. And what happens is that we're carrying unresolved pain, and it's manifesting in physical pain, sleeplessness, restlessness, and just really allowing yourself to have permission to actually feel what you feel. And I think about the scripture says Jesus had compassion and he healed them. And that's actually a feeling, that's an emotion. And so I believe us allowing ourselves to have that type of thought life. I'm allowed to feel what I feel, and not allow it to hinder us, but actually to confront it with truth so we can heal and be free from it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned it in the colored community, as you said. I was doing an interview, with a young lady, not too long ago, and she's she's a white lady. I can't even get the word out. But she was talking to me, because we was talking about mothers and women, which is her platform that she deals with, but we were talking about mental health.
Mm.
And so she was talking to me about, she met a young lady who's a black lady, and they were having a conversation, and she was saying how she was surprised because she didn't know, of course, that there is this stigma around mental health in the black community. So it's sort of a double burden
Yeah.
of, putting on this face of strength,
Yeah.
and not dealing with your issues or
Yeah.
whatever. And so, I was talking to her about it, and and then I was even talking, because I've had men on here, and definitely going to have more.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I try to push us to talk about, and push us to create these safe spaces,
Yeah.
definitely for men and African American men, to be exact, to be able to, like you said, to feel and
Yeah.
to be okay, to say, look, if I'm hurting, let me say I'm hurting, and
Yeah.
let me deal with that openly
Yeah.
amongst the guys, amongst the brothers, where we can really take down this facade, take off these fake capes that we
Yeah.
have put on ourselves and all of this, and really be vulnerable with one another, to be able
Yeah.
to reach out to each other and heal each other, and have these conversations that we need to have, that we've been hiding behind. And I don't
Exactly.
even know where it started. This whole thing started of putting on this strong
Mhm.
face or whatever. But we have to get past that, because yes, we are strong when we need to be, but
Mhm.
there are times when we're not. And we got to
Exactly.
be okay with those times too.
Yeah. And I recognize that when we don't allow ourselves to be weak, let's say when I'm weak, we're made strong in Christ. We can't actually even be strong and have the full attributes of Christ when we cannot even acknowledge our own weakness. And so he can't even come in and make us strong. And I'm recognizing my need to actually acknowledge and validate how I feel. One of the tools that I use in sessions is actually deep self-reflection. And again, just allowing yourself to be able to have these dialogues with ourselves. Okay. And one of them that, like you said before, why do we feel the need within our community to be a savior? Like,
Mhm.
I can't save myself, let alone anyone else. And I believe that one of the hindrance again in our community, in the colored community, is we're passing on this generational survivor mode, or this generational super cape, and no one is actually able to break free because we have normalized it so much.
Yeah, yeah, and we've built each other up with this false narrative that we're all trying to act like we're living up to it, because we none of us is living up to it. You know, what I mean? In public we try to act like, yeah, I got it all together, and
Mhm.
I'm, I've been through some things, but I'm pushing forward, and it didn't affect me. When truly, when we go home and behind the scenes, and when we're alone, we're
Yeah,
having these breakdowns and these
yeah,
moments of these things coming to us that we haven't dealt with, that
yeah,
we haven't healed from. And we're afraid to just admit that, you know what, I need some help.
yeah,
And that's one of the things that I love about this podcast, and guests like yourself when I have them on, to be able to have these conversations just with regular people. And I had this conversation before. I don't remember who I was talking to, but I remember saying, in this journey of the podcast, I'm coming up on by the time this airs, it would be a little over a year. So I'll be just past a year in recording. And I think about the guests that I have had and the reach that I want to have.
mhm,
And I'm thinking like, man, I would love to have some famous people on, or some,
yeah,
well-known people. But then I think about it, I'm like, you know what? Part of me don't want that,
yeah,
because I would rather have everyday people that's dealing with things, that have gone through things, to be able to connect with the other everyday people.
yeah,
So I would rather, have someone, just like me, that just like you, that get up, that
mhm,
go to work every day, but choose to make a difference in the people, in the lives of the people that we come in contact with, than to have this big, well-known celebrity person, whoever, that I really don't know. Because as we find, just in the news and things every day, that they definitely have issues that they haven't dealt
yeah,
with. Because again, it's even probably even worse for them, because they're already trying to put up this face of, I got it all together.
yeah.
But then they're in the public, so now they really got to put it on, and behind closed doors, they're crumbling.
I
And so
like
I really got it. I really like having uh, this platform to talk to everyday people like yourself.
That's one of the aims of a seat at the table. And I always express everyday women like me and like you. And one of my reasons for that is that we give a voice, an everyday voice, and an everyday face to transformation. We give an everyday voice and an everyday face of what it is to build resolve, to be on a journey, and to, hey, be transparent with our community. So I believe that's very, very important.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And we have to build, and I like the wording that you said, a seat at the table, because that's another thing with having these platforms, that we're able to build our own communities
Yeah.
and feed each other what we need.
Yeah.
We're able to come to the table with what you bring to the table. I come to the table what I bring to the table, and we build these communities that we're able to support one another and uplift one another where we're down, where we're
Yeah.
low. And I really love that. I love that wording. Just by itself.
You.
I really love that. So when you are working with some of the young ladies that you're working with, and trying to get them, on this journey, what does that process look like? Like when you meet them, just in general, nobody specific, but just when you meet them, and generally, like where are they in this process, and how does your process work to get them to where you're trying to get them to?
I believe one of the most important things before anyone can change is they have to acknowledge they need to.
Mhm.
Even when it comes to mentorship, no one can make you change. You have to desire it. And again, my journey began when I was tired of being sick and tired. I'm tired of the cycles. And, we have this cute little catchphrase now: I'm breaking generational curses and generational cycles. You actually have to be able to see it first. We don't have to necessarily do what our mom did, what my dad did. We don't have to do that, but we do have to acknowledge, something is off. I need change. And so that's the utmost thing is there are times like you can be in front, that person needs to do the inner work, but they have to want it and they have to acknowledge. And so what happens is, we sit down and it's like, it's a seat at the table too, but it's just one-on-one. What are you processing? What are you feeling right now? And just really begin to dig deep and then come up with ways to, I believe healing happens every day, so giving everyday steps, everyday goals to continue to solidify your healing journey.
And I like that. I like what you said. It was something that you just said, and my mind is trying to go blank on me. But it was something that you just said, and now I can't think of it. I hate that. I should have wrote it down. But even when we're talking about the process of just going, I know what it was. So one of the things that I do, I'm a fatherless daughter advocate, and generally the fatherless daughters that I talk to are adult fatherless daughters. And so one of the first questions that I ask them is when we're talking about, like you said, breaking generational curses. And one of the things that I ask them, because again, they have to acknowledge it. So one of the first questions that I ask is, what generation of fatherlessness are you? Right. Yeah. So are you first generation, or was your mother a fatherless daughter? Was her mother a fatherless daughter? And I ask them to see so they can recognize just how far it goes back. Yeah. Right. Then my second question is, okay, now that we know and we've recognized how far it goes back, my question to you is, how many generations that will come after you? Yeah, or will you be the one to change it? Yeah. And so just starting there, but being able to look at, there are some things that we are living through. There are some things that we are passing along to the next generation that are generational curses, if, for lack of a better term, that we'll just continue to pass on because no one is really taking the time to deal with it, and that's just one thing. But I know there's many other, areas where this same cycle is playing out.
One of my questions that I ask Ernest is, what triggers you? And I recognize no one can push buttons that we do not have. And as I began to really look at my triggers, I was able to dig deep. And I know one of the things was I did not really get a lot of validation growing up. Again, I was kind of considered a rebellious child because I always wanted to know, well, why do I have to do this? Why do women do this? Why? Because they just didn't sit right with me. And so recognizing my own triggers, what kind of sets me off, really caused me to begin to dig deep. And I'm recognizing again, when I'm before women, what are your triggers? And one of the main things is, how do you see yourself? I am in the process of starting this gratitude. They say a grateful heart is good. A grateful heart is good medicine. And I'm recognizing often we are comfortable saying what we're thankful for with outward things. But I've been crafting this program, Grateful for Me. And being able to sit down every day, mirroring and looking at I'm grateful for my freckles. I'm grateful for how I'm able to hold space for other people. And it really begins to teach us how to be grateful for who we are. And it breaks comparison. And it actually begins to build honor for ourselves.
I like that, because and one of the last conversations that I had, I was talking about vision board. So I did a vision board for the first time this year. And back in February, and I did this vision board, and I put it up on the wall. We did it and everything, and it was months later. The one day I was just looking at it, and I realized that it probably was like 10 things on this vision board, and out of the 10, I had accomplished like 7. you
Wow.
know. And so I
That
was
is
like, yeah, you know. And so I was sharing that with someone, and she was like, you know what? In her perspective, she said, I want you to try something, because a lot of times when we do vision boards, it's a vision of what we haven't accomplished or have yet to accomplish.
mhm,
And she said, one of the things that I would like you to do, she was talking to me, so one thing
mhm.
I would like you to do is to come up with a vision. I called it a visionary board. She said, so don't think about the vision of the things that you haven't accomplished or what you want to accomplish, but actually take inventory of the
Yeah.
things you have accomplished.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was like, man, I never really thought about, you know, just stopping and saying, man, what have I done? What have I accomplished?
Yep.
You know, and like you said, just being able to take that time to be grateful for the things that you have done. You know, we
Yeah.
all have dreams, we all have big goals that we want,
Yep.
and things that we look forward to in our future, but then just to be able to be present and be like, you know what,
Yeah.
I did okay. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I did okay. You know, I stumbled a little bit, and maybe I ran when I shouldn't have, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
made it back and I'm okay, you know.
Exactly. It's funny, Ernest, what I'm learning, again, the practice of gratitude for self, I'm learning that it empowers us to show up organically and authentically as us, knowing that who we are, what we carry, and what we have, and even our learned experience, they're enough and they're valid. And so I'm so grateful for that. Another thing that I teach is love, like self-love, and
Mhm.
again, love your neighbor like you love yourself. And often I found in my own experience, and even some of the women that I would talk to, that love was always an outward expression of what they can do for others, yeah, how they can serve others, and really recognizing that love starts within. And when we love ourselves, we have the healthy boundaries. We have
Mhm.
a healthy image of ourselves. And so that's another thing that you don't really hear people talk about, is again loving yourself, like love your neighbor like you love yourself. So love has to
Mhm.
start with us.
You know, and I like that you pointed that out. I've had the opportunity and the blessing to be joined with a organization called Forgiveness Mission.
Mm,
And so what we do, we have a um, sort of like a not a webinar, but like an online event. We do an online event every quarter of the year. We started doing it this year. Every quarter of the year, we have an online event. And one of the things that I talk about, that I teach for my section of it, is forgiveness of self, right? And
mm,
so as we're talking about, you know, loving yourself and appreciating yourself, I realized in the midst of teaching this that, you know, a lot of times we don't forgive ourselves.
yeah,
And just as we were talking about, just being growing up in the church and then running to do our own thing, you know, running, and let's say we ran into some situations that,
yeah,
you know, we felt different from after we did it, you
mhm,
know, and then maybe we're holding those things against ourselves, like, man, I
yeah,
shouldn't have did that. So now
yeah,
you're carrying this regret
yeah,
with yourself. And so in my teaching it, I came up with the acronym for self when it comes to self forgiveness,
mhm,
and it's season of life, emotional state, limited information, and forgiveness.
I
Right.
love that.
So the when we're talking about forgiving ourselves, and we look at the acronym for self, what was the season of life that we
Yeah,
were in at that
that's good.
time? Because we go through seasons, you
Mhm,
know, and that was, you know, may have been our rebellious season, you know, and so we have to acknowledge that, like, okay, I was a child, you
yeah,
know, running from, you know, I was just getting my freedom. I was running like a slave, you know. Acknowledge that that's where we were in that season of life. For the E, it's an emotional state. What was the emotional state that you were in at the
yeah,
time of that? And I always give the example about my mom passing away some years ago. But in that time period, emotionally, I wasn't in a good place.
yeah,
So had I made some decisions now that maybe I regret, I have to acknowledge that I was in an emotional state, you
Yeah.
know, and so that's why I deal with the emotional state, and the L is for limited information.
Mm.
Because sometimes we make decisions based off what we know or what we think we know,
Yeah.
and we don't have all the information, you
Yeah.
know. And so taking that into consideration that we didn't have all the information, then it's easier for us to forgive ourselves again for some of the decisions that we made. And then the F, I just simply say just forgiveness by recognizing that at the time of the offense that you made against yourself, that you're holding against yourself,
Yeah.
that you were doing the best that you could and that you knew how to do at
Yeah.
that time,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And so I just love that we deal with self.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just kind of, that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I teach. So I just threw that in there because you were saying self, and I'm like, yeah, let me throw this out
I love that. That is very important again because we can't if we can't love ourselves, we can't truly be in relationship with anyone else.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
carry ourselves with us everywhere we go. So it's important for us for the self life to be taken care of.
right. And if we don't know, and I always ask people, one of the things that I ask, because I've been on this journey of self development myself and getting into personal development and
Yeah.
just learning more about myself and my own thoughts. And so I'm always asking, like, what do you want? You
Yeah.
know, and sometimes I find that it's so hard for some people to answer. And
Yeah.
like, true, like, what do you want? Not nobody else. And no, what do you want? And what do you really want? Like outside of the surface stuff, when you really get down to it, what is your heart's desire for yourself? And I
Exactly.
think a lot of people, and probably even going back to like you said earlier, just with your upbringing of being raised to be a wife and never really taught to take in consideration of what you wanted for
Yeah.
yourself outside of being a wife, you
Yeah.
know. But I find that that's hard for some people to even answer, like, what do I really want for me?
Yeah. And I love this that we and you have to come to a place where your parents they gave you what they knew to give
Mhm.
you, and I am so grateful for my upbringing because it brought me back from my season of rebellion. And I have children now, and I'm grateful that I'm able to give them the language to be able to convey that. My 9-year-old in my household, I'm very intentional in creating safety, but like life happens sometime, and so my 9-year-old she's very sensitive to people raising their voice, and so at 9 she's able to say, when you raise your voice I don't feel safe. And so my response to her is, what do you need to feel safe again? She said, I just need a hug. So I'm like, oh my goodness, at 9 she's able to convey, go inward, see what her body needs, her emotions need, and be able to verbalize that. So I'm like, that is the retribution. That is breaking the generational cycles of being undone mentally, physically, and emotionally. Is me, from my experience, I get a chance to train her up so she can have these tools at an early age. So again, I'm like, all things work for my good.
Right, right, right. And that even goes back to just thinking about our upbringing, like we said, just growing up in the church. And definitely for myself, I can say there were times when, it's like you're supposed to be seen and not heard, I guess.
Bingo, that's the one.
Seen and
That's
not heard, and stay in the child's place, that whole scenario.
And
But
Ernest, I'm gonna be real. I'm still learning how to find my voice from that, and I really that was one of the things that prompted me, even with a seat at the table, is giving voice to everyday women, like me and like her. And the thing about it is, really, when you've been a victim of trauma, you
mm,
feel like you don't have choices. Like you have
right,
been at the hand of someone either abusing you, physically, sexually, mentally, whatever it is, and you feel stripped from your choices. And so being able to own your voice and own your story is empowering for a person just to reclaim the authority of their voice again, to reclaim their choices. So that's very important to me, from breaking that cycle of being seen and not heard.
yeah, and I think it gives you it sort of gives you when you can speak it. So we all in the Bible. So when we talk about when God created the heavens and the earth, he spoke it into existence. And so when someone takes your voice away, they take away your creativity to be able to speak those things that you want right into your life. And so I love what you're saying about giving them a seat at the table by giving them their voice back. Because now when you're able to say, this is how I feel, this is how I think, this is how, the things that I want out of my life. Now you can start speaking those things and building the life that you want. Because one of the things I always say, when you think about something, when you speak it, you're thinking it at the same time. So you're creating it, it's being created as you're speaking it, because as you're speaking it is now beginning to take shape, if only in your mind at that time. But once it comes to your mind, then you will as you act out and begin to walk into the things that you speak, then it will develop and it comes out into your everyday life, So I love it. I love it. So one of the last things that I want to talk about just briefly, with the young ladies that you work with, or even yourself to an extent, it's like you're on this journey, and to be able, and I think that's sort of what you're doing, because you're on this journey and then you reflect back from where you were and the journey that it took you to get to where you are now, and even looking forward to where you're desiring to be, so this is like your story, right? And so I feel like you're helping the young ladies to be able to write, and in some cases rewrite their story. When I was younger, I don't know, I might be older than you, I don't know, but when I was younger, they came out with these books. I don't remember what the exact name was, but they gave you choices, right? When you read the story, you would get to a part of the story, and then I'd say, okay, now you have to make a choice, turn left or turn right, and depending on what decision you made, they would say, okay, go to this page, and then it would follow on with the story. But you had a choice in how the story turned out, and so I think that what you're doing now is allowing the young ladies to not only to acknowledge their story, but then to be able to change it depending on the ending that they want to have.
Right. Yeah. I believe is very important to acknowledge the harm. What do you need to correct this harm as much as possible, and then to reclaim your voice and to reclaim your choices.
I love it. I love it. So you know what, Lacresia, I'm not gonna keep you up all night, all day, on this thing. So I want to first of all again say thank you for being on. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, or I don't know what you want to call it, whatever. Some last words to inspire us to keep us moving forward, and definitely also let us know where and how we can work with you and your social media handles. I'll give you a second to think on that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for joining in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I told you guys that I will tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast, and that is by becoming one of our super subscribers and entering our super subscriber contest. So what do you have to do? You have to subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and our podcast on Spotify. And after you have done those three things, you text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730. Text the word WIN to qualify to win $100 from the podcast. That's all you got to do. You're listening already. You support us already. Go on and like, subscribe, do what you need to do, and you can win. The contest is ongoing, so it never ends, and it's random. So I can pull a name at any time on any day. And once you're in, you win. So you can win. So again, To enter the contest, you need to subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and our podcast on Spotify. And after you've done those three things, you text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 for a chance to win $100 from the podcast. And it's that easy. So, Ms. Lacresia, first of all, again, let me say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for gracing us with your presence and your information. The floor is yours.
Okay. The advice that I would give any listener, any woman that's listening today to heal from the pain is, one, learn to acknowledge yourself by beginning to sit quietly with yourself, engage in your emotions, your spirit, and see where you are being really transparent and real with yourself, where you are, and begin to process those broken fragments, those woundedness. Process it. And a lot of times what I do with people that when we're starting off is process either through journaling. I love that because you can go back and track your growth and celebrate your growth. But to sit with yourself in an acknowledging way, acknowledging what you need, acknowledging your preferences. Yep.
Okay.
And how can you stay connected to me? I am on Instagram at OneEighty. It's 1-80 2 dashes, or you can reach me at my website, LacresiaArnold.com. We have services. We create safe places for women to be able to process unresolved hurt or trauma, or just process life in a safe space to get them unstuck where they can thrive spiritually, physically, and mentally.
All right. So again, thank you for being on here. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, because we are on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you next week. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.